You and I have a switch in our brains. It has two positions, possible and impossible. Until we flip the switch to possible, our creativity will be stifled.
They say that most people die with their music still inside them. That's kind of a depressing thought, but it's true that inspiration is not the limited commodity on this planet. Many people are inspired. Many people have desires to make music, to make movies, to build things, to establish a life, and yet they don't do it. And why? Often it's not a lack of inspiration, but rather a lack of motivation. Now, the motivational speaker industry is the butt of a lot of jokes because it seems like people are getting paid just to blow hot air at the audience. But motivation is the necessary ingredient, and without it, a lot of us don't do the things that we're capable of doing. So I'd like to talk just for a moment about something that helps me to be motivated to create. And I call the story, My Brother Built a House. And it's true. My brother, who had never built a house before, built a house. I can remember going for the first time to the piece of property. I was familiar with the property and I knew it was just a vacant lot. But when I went back, there was a beautiful two-story home standing where there had been no house before. Now that impressed me deeply. I still can feel the emotion that I felt seeing that house for the first time. It's that emotion that I want to draw on, I want to tap into for this story, because at first it was just an emotion of being overwhelmed, like, wow, I could never do that. And yet somehow he did it. So I asked him, how did you bring a house into existence? And he laughed it off. He said, well, I nailed a few boards together, or, I had done some drywall before. I had done a little painting. So he minimized what he had done. But then one day he decided to take my question seriously. And he said, hey, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that house. And he said, you said you couldn't build a house, but I want to ask you some questions. Okay, what do you want to know? He said, do you think that if you had an approved plan for a house on a lot, he said, do you think that you might be able to measure and plot the four corners of the structure? And I thought about it. I'd never done that, but yes, I can measure. I could probably find the property lines and figure out how far away from each one the corners of that house needed to be. And I could probably drive some metal stakes into the ground at the corners that I had plotted. And he said, now, do you think you could chalk lines from corner to corner? And I said, I don't know how to do that. He said, well, you can rent a piece of equipment. It's like they use to chalk the lines on a sporting field. He says, you put chalk in and you push it down on a line, a string, and you leave chalk behind. He said, do you think you could rent a piece of equipment and chalk lines from corner to corner all the way around that structure you had plotted? I said, yeah, given what you've told me, I could probably do that. And then he said, if you had the time and the tools and maybe some help, do you think you could dig trenches down those lines that you had chalked from corner to corner? I was starting to get the point. What he was doing was he's taking that overwhelming project and breaking it down into manageable pieces that I could actually get my mind around. And I knew that it would be hard. I knew there'd be a commitment involved, but now I was no longer immobilized. Now I was motivated to believe that I probably could do that. And it's that emotion of going from not having the courage or the capacity to suddenly being able to see my way through based on the small steps. It's that change that was pivotal for me. And I continue to draw on that change down to this day. See, there are so many things I never would have done in my life if he hadn't had that conversation with me, and if I hadn't turned the corner emotionally. So that's what I'd like to do. For anybody that cares to create, to bring things into existence, it doesn't have to be a house. It could be anything that you want to build or make or draw or compose. Break it down into manageable bite-sized pieces. Remember, they say that the way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So break it down into the pieces that you can get your mind around. And now have the courage to start knowing that the whole project is just a series of small jobs. Now, many of you watching this channel are content creators or want to be content creators. So if there's something holding you back, perhaps it's the enormity of the task that you see in front of you. You think the idea of creating a channel and creating a niche and creating content is just too overwhelming. Well, you're right, it is overwhelming, but the individual pieces of this puzzle are not overwhelming. Can you get a hold of a camera? Can you take an afternoon and learn how to use it? Can you learn some basic techniques for recording? Or can you hire somebody to edit your video or your recording when you're finished with it? Can you watch a guru on YouTube showing you how to post your information? See, all of these things are possible for us. We just have to be motivated. And hopefully something that you just heard will be for you the life-changing experience of my brother building a house.